So this is actually my first long video. I've been posting shorts for a while now, quick thoughts, small ideas, 1 minute at a time. And honestly, I enjoy that. But there's only so deep you can go in 60 seconds. And there's a lot I've been wanting to sit with properly. So one of the strangest things that I actually see about belief is that most people never consciously choose their beliefs themselves. They just find themselves growing into the beliefs that they have. Maybe the beliefs is from their parents, school, the society, the fear, even sometimes cultures, religion, or even the experience. And after a while, it's off feeling like belief to everybody because now it starts feeling like reality. And sometimes the hardest part of growth that you're going to learn, probably the hard way or the easiest way, is that it is not about you learning something new. It is about you realizing that some of the things you've been calling true for a very long time were never really examined in the first place. Because belief shapes our behavior, and behavior eventually shapes your life. So if you never stop to question what is driving you, you can spend years building a life that doesn't actually feel like yours. I'm Cheryl, and this is the Mirror. So the strange thing about belief is that they rarely announce themselves as belief. They usually show up as emotion, pressure, fear, anxiety. Like, for example, nobody is going to wake up and say that I believe I must be married before 30. That is not possible. That is not how it is going to appear in your mind. It is going to appear to you as panic, as anxiety at 27, as a feeling of you being behind, as this quiet tension that you can't fully explain with words. And I think the mind works a lot like a system, like an operating system. And that is what I call a mental OS. Because before you were old enough to question anything, people were already shaping how you see life. What success means to you, what failure is meant to mean, what kind of future someone like you is supposed to have. And the scary part of this is that most of these ideas, they run quietly in you in the background. You don't always notice the belief itself. You just notice the effect of the beliefs that you have. So the effects like hesitation, like you overthinking certain things, or like guilt, or sometimes even pressure. The version of yourself that keeps reacting automatically instead of consciously choosing what you really want to do. And honestly, I think a lot of people are living from patterns they inherited, not patterns they intentionally built themselves. For me, one of the clearest example was education. Growing up, the message was everywhere for me, even though nobody directly said it to me. No, it is more about go to school, get good grades, find a stable job. That is just the normal path, right? That is the standard. That is how life is supposed to work. And I never questioned it because it didn't feel like an opinion to me, right? It felt like a fact. But eventually, you're going to start noticing things. You see people who follow the exact same path they were taught to follow, and they still feel disconnected from themselves. They still feel unhappy. They still feel lost. A lot of us feel lost because we are running on an operating system that was written by some other people's belief that was not even their own in the first place. Then you see other people who took a completely different path or paths, and somehow they feel more alive, more present, more like themselves. And honestly, that observation changed something for me because the question became bigger than my career now. It's now more about how many things in my life have I accepted without ever really examining them. You understand me? Ever really questioning them. And the scary other part of this is that society has another layer to this thing, which is the timeline that society has. add to it. That invisible deadline that you need to follow. The about you being successful by certain age, having figured something out or figuring everything out by certain age, you getting married before it is too late, even though nobody knows what too late is. And even when you logically know that those timelines are arbitrary, like they still have effect on you emotionally. Because human being naturally wants belonging. Nobody wants to feel left behind. And then there's this belief around success itself. The idea that your worth is tied to feasible results, like money, status, titles, recognition. So you start to tell yourself, when I finally achieve this thing, when I finally achieve X, then I will feel complete. But then you get that X that you're looking for, that you're talking about. And eventually the feeling of success fades away. Then there's another target, another Y, right? Then another one. That is not peace. That is a continuous loop. Because the real issue was never the achievement itself. It was the belief that was underneath that achievement. The belief that you're not enough until something external confirms that you're very much enough. And what a lot of people don't understand is no amount of achievement can permanently fix that for you. It just keeps moving the target forward for you. And I think one reason people struggle to question this thing, like this belief, is because belief eventually becomes identity. And once something becomes your identity, challenging it now feels personal to you. It is no longer the feeling of being like maybe the idea is wrong. It now becomes a feeling of maybe you don't know who you are. And the mind naturally resists that. It hates that. It's protest against that because it wants stability. Even if stability is very limiting, it is not going to lead to growth. Even if it's outdated, even if it is making you miserable, it still wants that because familiar pain to your mental ways, to your brain, still feels safer than unfamiliar uncertainty, right? Plato talked about this in Allegory of the Cave that I read, and the basic idea is simple. He said, imagine spending your entire life staring at a shadow on a wall. Then suddenly someone opens a door and light enter that room. Your eyes is going to struggle to adjust to the light. But this is not because the light is bad. It is because you became comfortable with the dark. And honestly, I think a lot of people experience growth that same way. Not as excitement, but as comfort, as confusion, as their old understanding of life slowly stop to make sense. And people want to go back to what is actually familiar to them. But because uncertainty is uncomfortable, people tend to go back to what they are most comfortable with. But still, the version of you that keeps running back to that old pattern every time life becomes unclear never really get the chance to discover who they are outside of what they inherited from people around them. So, how do you actually start noticing these things? How do you notice these patterns? How do you start knowing the beliefs that actually matters to you and the beliefs that you really need to question? I don't think you find beliefs by sitting down and saying that, let me think about my beliefs. Let me see which one works. Let me see which one doesn't work. I think you notice them through behaviors, certain patterns, certain behaviors that you have, or the patterns that you keep repeating. The place where you constantly hold yourself back when you're about to pass through it. That emotional reaction that happens before the logic even enters the room. That is usually where the deeper stuff is hiding. And once you notice this pattern, you start to ask yourself, what would I need to believe for this behavior to make sense? This question is going to reveal a lot of things to you. It's going to relieve a lot of things way more than you endlessly asking yourself, Why am I like this? Because that usually just turns into brain stress. And then another important question you need to ask yourself is, after recognizing the pattern, you need to start asking yourself, did I choose this belief? Or did it just arrive from people I trusted and I never questioned it? And honestly, I think part of becoming you is learning how to sit in the space between your old belief and that new clarity. Most people rush back to the familiar thinking because uncertainty feels like very much uncomfortable. But uncomfortable space matters. That is exactly where self understanding starts. That is exactly where the unbecoming of your whole self begins. Not becoming, not about you becoming someone that is entirely new, but more about you slowly removing things that were never really you to begin with. And I don't think beliefs are so solid as we imagine they are. A lot of them are simply repeated ideas that became normal to you over time. Maybe it was passed from someone to you, or maybe from a generation to another generation, from your forefather to your father, or people teaching each other what they themselves never fully questioned. And maybe the important thing is not about you trying to destroy every belief you have. Maybe it's just about you learning how to look at them honestly, without fear, with the audacity, without immediately defending them at all, without you assuming every inherited ideas automatically belongs to you. Because you're not just a voice in your head, you are also the one that is capable of observing it. And I think that really changes a lot of things because now it helps us to reframe the question that we ask ourselves about what do I want in life from maybe an even deeper question, which is that what have I accepted as true without ever really examining it? This is my first long video. And honestly, I'm glad I finally sat down and made this. If something here connected with you, let me know in the comments. And if there's a belief that you have quietly outgrown, maybe this is a sign for you to finally look at it properly. Anyways, I will see you in the next reflection.